right, y'all, I am back again. So this particular module, we are talking about something that's really dear to my heart, just due to a personal experience that I personally had. And so this module is crisis management, right? Crisis management. Crisis management is in any situation that feels overwhelming, urgent, or has an emotional intent, right? So I'll teach you guys more so how to pause, think clearly, because when there is a crisis, we panic, right? And just teaching you how, not to say that you won't panic, but teaching you again is crisis management. So how to manage your emotions, the things that are going on around you, and respond quickly, in those situations, instead of panicking, shutting down, and reacting emotionally. Crisis management is more so about staying grounded under pressure. And sometimes it may seem easier said than done. So the couple of scriptures that I do have for this one, I have Psalm 46:1 that says, God is our refuge and strength and ever present help in trouble. John 14:27 says, peace I leave with you, my peace I give you. I do not give to you as the world gives. Do not let your hearts be troubled and do not be afraid. Again, crisis management is the ability to, stay calm, react quickly under pressure, basically. But in this first lesson, we are talking about staying calm and grounded in a crisis. And like I say, when we panic, we typically make situations and make things bigger than what they have to be, right? If I used to work at a after school program, and so I was working, with a lot of kids, and just having different situations that, kids, go through, either whether somebody, falls and it breaks their arm, or they fall and their nose is bleeding, or they're having, an anxiety attack or asthma attack. If you're, working somewhere where, like 911 has to be called. If you're driving somewhere, and you see an accident, like some type of crisis that's like oh my gosh, what can I do to help, right? Calm creates the clarity, right? And sometimes when we get in those crises, like, we literally have to pray. You get what I'm saying? And it ain't, I'm not saying like, fall to your knees and pray, because it just depends on where you are. But I'm saying a quick, prayer, Holy Spirit, activate, really. You get what I'm saying? Because you want to stay as calm as you can. And like I said, again, it varies from person to person. It varies from situation to situation. But when we learn to just try to practice those skills, when those things, arise, and trying to pause before we react. And I'm not talking about pause for 5-10 minutes. I'm saying literally pausing for a second or two to calm down, Holy Spirit activate, so I can move effectively to figure out what I need to do to help in this, situation. Because of course what's going to happen is your body is going to go in, distress. Your body is going to have that flight or fight response, and it's going to freeze up and all of those things. And it's normal for us to panic. It's normal for us to try to run around with our heads cut off to try to figure out, oh my God, what should I do? But in all sense, that typically doesn't help. A personal situation with me was when my grandmother had passed in 2024. And luckily, thank God that I was there with her when she did pass. But just a long story short, she had started, gasping for air. And at the time I was, CPR certified. But I had other family members that were there with me as well. And to make a long story short, we actually had to end up doing CPR on my grandmother. Now, I personally did not perform the CPR. So another one of my family members was the one that actually started, performing CPR until the paramedics got there. They continue, you know, to do what they end up doing. Transported her, you know, to the hospital, and, you know, unfortunately she still did not make it. But for me, I guess in that time, I had other family members that, you know, were there. And some of them were older. And so in that moment of, okay, I'm CPR certified, I'm going to do, you know, the CPR, but then also trying to regulate the other family members that were there. It's like, you know, if you're not helping, you have to back away, because you don't want to distract the people, you get what I'm saying, that are helping, or distract the one that is on the phone with 911, or distract the person that is, you know, doing the CPR. So for me, I was the one that actually, you know, called the paramedics. So I'm on a, you know, phone with them. But then, like I said, I have an older family member that was also there, that's like, you know, walking with a walker, and they're trying to get in the room where we are, where the CPR is going on. And I'm like, hey, I'm literally on the phone with 911. She's trying to tell me, well, I have her on speaker rather, and tell me like what to do, or the other member that's performing the CPR, like what to do. I'm trying to like get the other family member like out the way, because they can't hardly walk, and, you know, they're walking with a walker, and then I got somebody else trying to beep in on my phone, and I can't answer. In the crisis, y'all, literally a lot of things happen. Like 5 things are literally going on in your head, because one, you're trying to help the person, but then, like I said, you're also trying to ensure that everybody else is safe too. And then you have, you know, just emotions going on in your head in reference to, oh my God, I hope, you know, this is working. I hope, you know, they make it. If you have not ever been in a crisis situation, I pray that you don't ever get in that situation, because everybody cannot. I'm just be honest with you. Some people, they can't handle that. You know, it just depends on the severity of the situation. And so a couple of action steps, but, you know, they happen. But a couple of action steps in reference to that. Number 1 is to practice, you know, stop and take 3 breaths, right? In deep breaths, like literally calming yourself down. You have to do that. So practice doing that throughout the day with normal everyday things. So if you do happen to come in some type of crisis that's a little bit more extreme, your body kind of knows, okay, I need to calm down. Grounding tools. So I have name 3 things you see, name 2 things you hear, and name 1 thing that you feel. So what I would do is I would say, you know, I see the chair at the table. I see my phone. I see my water bottle. And here it sounds like somebody literally just started their car. You know, hear myself talking. I'm touching my pants. You want to literally feel the response of what you're saying and what you're doing. So I'm touching, you know, or I can feel my leggings, right? But again, it's a coping mechanism, exercise, grounding, exercise that you can do, and it helps, like I say, with anxiety, being overwhelmed, and it just helps your mind stay present and focus in that time. Last thing is your response question. What is the best next steps? And I know, again, y'all, this could be easier said than done, because these steps here in the moment, in the situation with my grandmother, like you said, you know, you don't think right off the bat, but if you take into account of doing this daily, as it becomes a routine, as it becomes a habit, when you do get in a situation, or if you ever get into a situation, you know, in a crisis situation, is not to say that, you know, you're going to be perfect, but it, again, it's management. So you're just trying to lessen the stress a little bit more than if you know, hadn't practiced it at all, and trying to do that in that moment. Lesson 2, we're talking about assessing the situation and making smart choices. So again, that's literally what I just said in the last part of number 1. Not every crisis is an emergency, right? I gave you an example because unfortunately that was an emergency when it came down to my grandmother. But again, every crisis doesn't necessarily have to be an emergency. but we do need to know the clarity of what's the best next steps to take. Sometimes we typically react emotionally versus assessing the situation, figuring out, okay, this did not work out for me, so what are the next best steps that I do, need to take. And so a couple of things that I do want you to, you can go into your workbooks, is going to be under reality check. A couple of things I want you to ask yourself is anyone in danger? Okay, is anyone in danger? Number two, what's actually happening, right? What is the actual problem? Assess the situation, okay? You observe the situation. If it's 2 or 3 people that's involved, then you need to get a statement from person 1, get a statement from person 2, get a statement from person 3. And then assess the problem, and then have that conversation. Sometimes maybe with all 3 of those members. Maybe it's somebody that's literally like, not necessarily like fighting, but like in a real heated argument in front of customers. You get what I'm saying? Like, you got 3 people, literally your employees or people that's in your team, just going at it, yapping. That doesn't look good to the people coming inside your business, right? So, okay, we got a small little mini crisis going on outside. You going off, you cussing, you still want to be professional. So, okay, this is what's happening. This is what's going on. Is anybody in danger? It don't look like it, but I need to defuse the situation before it gets to that point, right? So, okay, maybe you can take person, 1 or 2 off to the side, and then person 3 gonna have to do Jericho walk around the building a couple of times, right? Because she needs to cool off. You just need to figure out what's what. But then it goes back to the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 method, or if you want to do the 3, 2, 1 method. Okay, let me calm down, right? Let me not get so hostile, because I have to ensure that 3 of my people on my team are good, I'm good, and my customers are good, right? Or my clients are good, right? Or my students are good, right? Whoever your audience is. So after you ask yourself those 3 things, then you have your option list. So you want to write 2 to 3 possible responses. And again, in these particular situations, of course, you're not literally physically sitting down, writing and checking these things off. But these are just action steps that I want you to, incorporate or practice. And so these are just notes that I'm telling you to do. You don't have to physically carry your workbook around with you all the time. But then choose wisely, right? So choose wisely in reference to ensuring that your people are protected, that everybody is still showing that, integrity, and showing future positive outcomes within whatever the situation is about, right? And so that's how you're able to effectively work out the situation that's at hand. Lesson 3, last thing for crisis management, we are basically talking about seeking support, right? Seeking support and recovering after a crisis. And again, every crisis does not have to be an emergency. But you want to surround yourself with positive people and ask people for help, right? Ask strong people for help. If we're talking about the situation where those 3 people were literally just yapping and fussing and stuff like that, you want to ask, okay, hey, can I get some help over here? Can I get, somebody to take person 2 off to that corner? Person 3, you need to go ahead and walk around, the building. Have somebody just stand out there. They don't have to walk with them, but, just have somebody stand out there just to make sure that they're good, that they don't go off and do, something crazy while you're handling, with person number 1. So you want to seek help and ask somebody, hey, can you help me with this situation right quick? You get what I'm saying? Because there's nothing wrong with actually asking for help. You want to recover after that particular, situation. But then I had to take time out for me, and I had to recover, because I'm just like, wow, I literally just went through something traumatic, an emergency where, you literally see, someone talking literally, and then in the next 30 seconds they are non-responsive, they're not speaking, and then a couple of minutes they have passed away. And that's just a personal journey that I have, gone on and that I'm still trying to get through, but also still taking the necessary recovering steps for myself. So if I happen to get in Lord knows, hopefully I don't have to get in another situation like that. But, if I happen to get in another crisis situation, I kind of have a sense of, okay, Toya, we need to slow down. We need to figure out what's what, and that's what I had to do, even though the paramedics was, working on her, I had to call people, like I had to, at that time, I hadn't even called my mom yet because things were literally going so fast. This is before they had took it to the hospital, but I'm saying in the process of on the phone with 911, trying to make sure the other older member is out the way, them doing CPR, and then of course, they're asking me all these questions, and then I'm like, okay, I get off the phone with them, okay, I gotta call, my mom, I gotta let her know what's going on, I gotta call, other people to let them know, hey, y'all gotta get down to, grandma's house, X, Y, Z is happening. Things literally can just happen in a split second, and you just want to ensure that you are prepared, for those situations, because we don't know when those situations are going to arise. But like I said, if we just continue to practice those things in our daily lives, then, it will become a little bit easier than, if you have to go through that situation. I think action steps that I have for this is to identify, again, like I say, identify at least 3 people, speak up, right? Speak up and share what happened and how you actually feel. So even though they were the 3 people that was going at it, you can have a conversation with all of them and let them know, like, listen, this is not how we are going to treat each other, how we're going to, treat this establishment, how we're going to show, our customers and the other team how we get down. Like, this is not what we're going to do. You get what I'm saying? So speak up and let them know what's what. And then last thing is, what did I learn and what can I do differently next time? So again, that goes back to just reflecting and resetting yourself in a way to just always be prepared. What they say, if you ready, you stay ready, you got to get ready, right? And so what I want to leave with you in closing is going to be, how do I usually respond under pressure, and how can I respond better next time? The declaration for this is, I stay calm, think clearly, and seek help when I need it. And then go back to those scriptures that I had mentioned earlier as well, about, just knowing that in all of your situations, God is going to be there with you, and he's going to equip you and give you, what you need to handle that situation. So that is all for crisis management, and I'll see you in the next module. See ya.